YouTube decided that my video was too long. It probably was. I'm going to try and edit them later. But anyway, to continue on, and I know that the sound on this is really low. Try and listen with headphones. I don't know why that is, and again, I will try and fix it later or re-record it later. So, we've got this highly, highly deadly radioactive source. It's given off all kinds of bad to all these people who think that it's a good thing. They think that it's pretty, it's a gift from God, it's supernatural, it's amazing. They're playing with it. They're putting it on their hands, their bodies, they're dancing around. Children are playing in it. One of them ingests it, eats it. It's probably getting in their eyes, probably getting in their mouths. A lot of them are inhaling it because it's a dust. It can spread around, it can get on their clothes. They go through the streets, it blows off, it goes and touches other people. They found this device on, what did I say? September 13th. On September 28th, which is 15 days after they cracked this thing open, Gabriella, who is the wife of the junkyard owner who found this machine, becomes convinced that it is making everybody around her sick. They're getting lesions on their skin, which are actual radiation burns, and they're getting diarrhea, and they're getting nauseous. She wants to take this to the hospital. She gets a worker from her husband's business to come with her, and they carry this on public transportation to the hospital. Just in a plastic bag. So, this is where we're going to pick up. So a lot of these who are going to the hospital for treatment, they're getting told that it's some kind of tropical disease, some kind of exotic thing, and they're being sent to the tropical diseases hospital. So this is where they are sent with their radioactive device. One of the doctors starts to get suspicious of this machine part. He's not quite so sure about it. So he contacts a colleague who's more of an expert in this nuclear stuff. This doctor is named Paulo Roberto Montero. And he looks at this glowing substance and he says, "Get this out of my building. I don't know what this is, but it ain't good." So they take the bag and they put it out in the courtyard of the hospital, away from them. At this point, when the international agencies picked up, they suspected that 90% of the radiation had already been expelled from this material. So the hospital didn't actually get that high of a dose. By recognizing that this was probably radioactive and moving it out of the hospital, Dr. Montero he saved his life, and he saved the life of, other employees in the hospital, because even though 90% of the radiation is gone, it's still a lot of radiation that you're not supposed to have. So at this point, they're starting to think that it might be a good idea to contact the State Department of the Environment. So they do. The State Department's like, well, you don't know anything about radiation, radioactive waste, you need to get a medical physicist to look at this item. So the physicist that they contact in the official report, he's only listed as WF. He uses a scintillation counter borrowed from a national government agency which is involved in the nuclear fuel cycle. So some sort of Geiger counter-like device. This device is calibrated to find uranium, which has a range of 0.03 to 30 microgray per hour. Now remember, the dose that these people are actually receiving is around 4 gray. The wife receives a dose of 5. The girl who consumed the cesium got a dose of around 7. So their WF is in the hospital. He has the machine on as he's walking in, and he is pretty far away at this point, several yards at least, and he sees that it's going off. No matter where he turns it, this machine is detecting radiation. So he's like, this thing has to be broken. I need to go get something else. So he goes back and he gets another scintillation counter. So he comes back with, we're just going to call it a Geiger counter, points it around, it's still going off like crazy. So he's like, alright, something funky is going on. He's like, oh my god, if this is going off, the radiation in this building is huge. I'm imagining if I was WF, I'd be like, oh, I'm getting the hell out of here. Screw all you people. Peace. So the Dr. Montero, sorry, one of it is like listing it as Dr. P, and one of them is, gives his full name. So I'm like, Dr. P is Dr. Montero. So he's kind of getting creeped out. So he calls the fire department. Fire department looks at this stuff and he's like, well, let's just throw it in a river. Let's get it out of here. WF arrives right before they're about to do that. And he's like, no. That's radioactive. You don't throw that in a river. Imagine if that had gotten in the river. It'd be in the water supply. It'd be infecting like everybody in Brazil. Or at least everybody in this town. So WF is talking to the fire department, he's talking to the doctors, and he's like, you need to evacuate the hospital. So they do. And they make sure nobody else gets near the cesium. And after talking to the doctor, they set off to the junkyard, where the Geiger counter goes off the scale. The radiation is huge. Finally, they contact the Secretary of Health. Finally, the authorities get involved. Remember, we're about 15 days after this whole affair started. So, what they do? The Civil Defense Forces were notified. The hospital was informed that a number of patients were contaminated, and the known sources of contamination were resurveyed with equipment from the radiotherapy clinic. Running out of computer battery. An emergency receiving and decontamination facility was set up in a local stadium. All in all, 130,000 people overwhelmed the area hospitals. Of those, 250 people, some with radioactive residue still on their skin, were found to be contaminated through the use of Geiger counters. Eventually, 20 people showed signs of radiation sickness and required treatment. International teams were sent to decontaminate and treat the victims of the disaster. There's not a whole lot that can be done in cases of radiation sickness. Therapy consisted of dealing with the acute period of bone marrow suppression and subsequent immune deficiency, treating the burns, removing radiation from the body, and general support. These patients were actually so infected that they recontaminated their skin by sweating. They had cesium in their bodies, so when they sweat, it came back out again. Many people were lucky and they received fractionated doses. Over a long time period, they only were in contact with the source for a little bit, and then they'd go away, which gave their bodies time to heal. The people who actually died from this didn't have that time away from it, so their bodies couldn't heal in between. They didn't build up a tolerance, in a way. So 4 people died from this incident. The saddest one, the little 6-year-old niece of the owner of the junkyard. She received a dose of 6 gray, as I said before. Actually, I think I said 7, sorry. When an international team arrived to treat her, she was confined to an isolated room in the hospital because everybody was afraid to go near her. The only person who go near her was her mom, and her mom was sick too. She had the worst case of this. She gradually developed swelling in the upper body, hair loss, kidney and lung damage, and internal bleeding. She died on October 23rd, 1987, of septicemia and generalized infection as a result of the contamination. And I need to plug my computer in, so we're going to pause again.